Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. State's ready to proceed.
Good morning to you. Welcome back. We're ready to resume. The state may by calling your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, and this time the state would call Mr. Joshua Weaver to the stand.
Sir, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weaver, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name for the record?
Joshua Weaver,
Mr. Weaver, how do you spell your last name?
W-E-A-V-E-R.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Weaver, how are you employed?
I work for Cafe Perazod as the catering director.
Can you tell us a little bit about Cafe Perazod? What type of restaurant is that, sir?
It's a Mediterranean restaurant. They do on-site and off-site events, off-site catering events.
And the main restaurant location, where is that, sir?
It's in downtown Durham.
How long have you been with Cafe Perazod?
A total of about 4 years.
And I believe you said your current position is the catering director.
That's correct.
During your entire 4-year career there at Cafe Perazod, has that been your sole duty, or have you done other duties at the restaurant?
I've done other duties. I took over this position about 2 years ago.
Tell us a little bit about what you do as a catering director there with Cafe Perazod.
If someone wants to book a special event in-house, then I coordinate and work with them about details. Same thing for off-site events.
And do you go to the events yourself, or do you have other people that go and supervise the event? How does that work?
It works both ways. It depends on the client, the number of guests that are coming, the venue. Sometimes the venues specify that we need to come. So.
Miss Lucia Foster testified yesterday. Do you know her, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
Tell us how you know her.
She started off working as a bartender for the restaurant, and then she eventually moved over and worked at a concession area or a small area in the same building that's owned by Perazod.
She's still with the restaurant today.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Weaver, I want to turn your attention back to June 28th of 2014. Did you have the opportunity on that date to work a special event at an off-site location?
Yes, typically for this group size, I probably wouldn't have worked it. But the client was a special friend of our owner, so I wanted to make sure that every detail was worked out correctly.
You mentioned that there was a group size. What was the size of this event that you were going to be working?
I believe it was around 50 people.
Why would you normally not work an event of that size, Mr. Weaver?
Because I have a head staff, I had wait staff, and he's been with the company for 25 years, so I can trust him with events this small.
In terms of the events that you normally work, 50 people, is that kind of on the low side or smaller sized crowd that
It is, yes, sir.
that your restaurant caters events for?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that y'all were paying special attention to this event because the owner of Perazod knew the host of the party. Who was that, sir?
That's correct. Giorgio, he knew the Matthews, or Kim Matthews.
When did you receive the assignment, if you recall, sir, in terms of this was going to be your event that you were going to be handling personally?
Giorgio gave me the referral, and then I reached out to Kim to start working and planning the event.
Kind of tell us a little bit about how you went about planning it, what type of wedding this was going to be, and the steps that you and your restaurant were going to take to cater the event.
So first I met with the client to see, where it was going to be taking place, how she wanted things to be set up. We worked out menu and beverages and who would be covering what.
You mentioned beverages and who was going to be providing those. Alcohol. Was alcohol going to be present at this wedding?
Yes, sir.
Who was providing the alcohol?
The Matthews.
The Matthews themselves?
Yes, sir.
Is that unusual for the host of the party to provide the alcohol, or is that something you've had happen at other?
It's not unusual. It just depends on the client.
And did Mrs. Matthews mention to you why she was providing the alcohol at this wedding?
If she did, I don't remember.
How about the other food that was going to be there? Do you recall what type of food selection there was going to be?
Well, Giorgio took special attention just because this was a friend of his, so he actually created the menu himself. So.
Any other interaction with Mrs. Matthews prior to the wedding?
No, sir.
So you yourself attended the wedding on June 28th, 2014?
Yes, sir.
Approximately what time did you get there, Mr. Weaver?
I can't be certain. I want to say it was around 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock.
And what were you doing there to start with?
We come in and we start setting up the event. So my staff typically sets up like the chairs, the tables, the bar, etc.
When you arrived, was the alcohol already at the Matthews residence?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about kind of what you did to set up and get the wedding started.
So we placed out chairs, we placed out tables, kind of preset anything that we could, and just of course worked out with the client to make sure the timeline was still correct, everything that we discussed before was still accurate.
Mr. Weaver, what time was the wedding to start?
I believe 7 o'clock or 7:30.
Well, let me ask you this. In terms of documentation for this wedding, did Mrs. Matthews and Parazide enter into a contract, and then did you do a timeline and a catering checklist?
Yes, sir.
If I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
May I approach Madam Clerk before I speak to this? Mr. Weaver, first of all, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 29 that was introduced into evidence yesterday through Mrs. Foster. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 29?
Yes, sir.
What is that, sir?
This is a floor plan I created with the details that Kim and I had discussed.
And does that demonstrate the backyard or the front yard, or illustrate the backyard or the front yard of the Matthews residence?
It's the backyard.
You mentioned that you and Parazide and Mrs. Matthews entered into a contract for this wedding. I'm going to show you what has previously been marked for identification purposes. It's State's Exhibit 31. If you'll take a look at that document, tell me if you recognize what that document is.
Yes, it's a typical contract that I create.
Any changes or alterations to that document, Mr. Weaver?
No, sir.
And does that appear to be the contract between yourself and Mrs. Matthews for Parazide to host the wedding at her residence?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 31 into evidence.
State's Exhibit 31 is admitted into evidence.
Mr. Weaver, you said that you prepared a timeline and you were beginning to kind of give us some details about what happened when. I want to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 32. If you'll take a look at that document, tell me if you recognize what it is.
Yes, sir. It's a timeline that I created.
Any changes or alterations to that timeline?
No, sir.
And is it the timeline for the Matthews wedding?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 32 into evidence.
State's Exhibit 32 is admitted into evidence.
And finally, sir, State's Exhibit, what has been marked as State's Exhibit number 33, if you will tell us what that document is.
This is a catering checklist. This is what I go over every time I have an off-site event to make sure I'm remembering to bring or rent any additional items that we may need for service.
Any changes or alterations to this catering checklist, sir?
No, sir.
And it details the items that your company, Perizod, was going to provide at the Matthews wedding.
That's correct, yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 33 into evidence.
State's Exhibit 33 is admitted into evidence.
I want to start with that exhibit, Mr. Weaver, State's Exhibit number 33. Regarding the alcohol that we talked about that you said the Matthews provided, did you make any notes on State's Exhibit 33 as to the alcohol that was to be provided?
Yes, I have noted here that all beverages will be provided by client: wine, beer, bottled water, and champagne.
Okay. Beside beer, do you have a separate note or a notation there for what type of beer is to be provided?
Not the type, but I have noted that she may or may not have glasses for the beer.
And then bottled water, was there any specific notation made as to the bottled water?
Yes, I have a notation here that she wanted the bottled water to be served in the bottle.
Okay. Any particular reason for that, Mr. Weaver, as to why someone would just have the water served in the bottles?
To save on glassware, because renting extra glassware for water gets pricey.
So if someone wanted water at this wedding, it would have been provided to them directly or in a bottle?
Most likely, yes.
Some sort of Aquafina, Dasani, whatever bottle
Correct.
water you're providing. Okay. And then the champagne and then wine, do you recall if it was white wine or red wine or a combination of both?
I want to say it was both white and reds, but I don't remember the types or anything.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now going back to the timeline that we were beginning to go through, tell us a little bit about how the events were to proceed that morning, or excuse me, that afternoon.
So I had my staff reporting on at Perizod at 3:30 to start prepping for the event. I had scheduled that they would arrive around 4:30 at the Matthews residence, and then between 4:30 and 5, I have 5 to 6:45 is set up. 7 o'clock is anticipated early arrival of guests. 7:30 ceremony starts. 8 o'clock ceremony ends, and this is when the bride and groom takes photos and etc. And we have the cocktail hour in the front. At 8:30, the guests are invited back around to the backyard to enjoy more beverages and food. 8:45, couple is announced first dance. 9:15, cake cutting. 10:30, event time. And I've noted here that we weren't sure how the event was going to end per se. A lot of times with wedding receptions, it's a send-off or some type of last call, but that decision at this time hadn't been made yet.
And Mr. Weaver, as with any event, sometimes timing gets off a little bit. You recall on June 28th whether things kind of ran according to this timeline, or was there some variation?
To be quite honest, I don't remember. I'm more than certain there was a little bit of variation, but I don't know which way it was. I don't know if we were running early or a little bit late.
Don't recall being an hour off one way or another, maybe a few minutes.
Yeah, I don't recall being an hour off now.
All right. Let's start. We'll start around 7 o'clock, where you have anticipated earlier arrival of guests. You're present and working at that time, Mr. Weaver.
Yes, sir.
Up until that point, sir, had you had any contact with kids or teenagers in this case, J.T. Taylor, Anna Ergish, Natalie Freeman, Josh McCoy, or Thomas Matthews?
The only interaction I remember at that time was with Thomas. My staff was in the kitchen area, and one of my staff members, my lead staff member, helped him iron a shirt because he wasn't sure how to iron a shirt.
Did you, so at that point, did you specifically have any interaction with him?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. And Mr. Weaver, at that time, could you tell if Thomas had been drinking or was impaired in any way?
No.
When do you first first recall seeing the group of teenagers?
I remember at some point before the wedding started, they went across the street to the neighbor's house.
And was it still light out at that time?
Yes, sir.
So you have the ceremony starting at 7:30.
Mhm.
And do you recall if it was around 7 o'clock when you saw them going across the street?
I don't know the exact time. I just know it was before the ceremony.
When you saw them go across the street, did you notice anything unusual? Did you see them with a bottle or anything like that?
No.
And when you saw them, how many of the teenagers were present when you saw them going across the street to start with?
I want to say 3 or 4, but I can't be exact on that either.
Males, females, combination of the two?
I think it was a combination of the two.
All right. You had the ceremony starting about 7:30. Is that about the time you remember it starting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember having any interaction with the teenagers or seeing where they were seated at during the wedding?
No, sir.
When was the next time that you noticed, the teenagers there that night, sir?
The next time I remember seeing them was in the back parts after the ceremony and after the cocktail hour. There was a small cocktail table closer to the bar that I'd walked up to because JT actually called me over and he was asking me what I was planning on doing the rest of the evening, being very jovial, and I could tell they were intoxicated.
How could you tell they were intoxicated at that point, Mr. Weaver?
The way they were speaking, a little bit of slurred speech and louder. And I remember taking a notice of looking down at the table to see if there were any glasses, and all the glasses were empty. And then I remember going and telling one of the staff members to go around and making sure they're clearing tables.
So when you saw JT, there were glasses on the table at that point?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what those glasses look like, Mr. Weaver?
I just remember them being empty.
And you said earlier, kind of when we were going through the checklist of what you were providing, that the glasses were to be used for the alcohol. Is that right?
That's correct.
But they were all empty at the point you saw them.
Yes, sir.
Did you see the kids going to and from the bar, either in the front or the back that night?
No, sir.
Tell us a little bit more about the interaction that you had there with JT at the table. Do you recall, and you can refer to your timeline if you need, as to when that interaction occurred?
I can't even be certain what time frame it was. I just remember it was after the ceremony. And I remember he called me over and he asked me what I was doing that evening, very jovial. And I was like, probably hanging out with friends. What are you doing? And I don't remember what he replied, but his friends there were laughing. And I was like, okay, these guys are just joking around and they're drunk, so I'm going to walk away now.
How long would you say that entire interaction lasted, Mr. Weaver?
Probably 30 seconds.
You said the other kids were there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember if Thomas was there and Anna and Natalie and Josh?
I don't remember the 2 girls being there, but I remember the 2 other gentlemen being there, yes.
And did you know that one of them was Thomas?
Yes, sir.
And how about Josh McCoy? Did you meet or interact with him
No.
during the night?
Yep.
Other than that interaction, Mr. Weaver, that you had with JT there, any other contact with them through the rest of the night?
No. Not personal interaction, no.
How about just generally? You mentioned that they were there at that cocktail table that we've talked about, and if I may have just a moment, Sharon. Sharon, if I may publish State's Exhibit 27 at this time. Mr. Weaver, is that the kind of the layout of the backyard there?
Yes, sir.
And does it correspond to State's Exhibit 29, the diagram that you have in front of you?
Yes. Yes and no, because here it shows the chairs being in a format of facing the ceremony, but we had already cleared them out to place them around the tables.
So this is actually post ceremony, and this is dance floor, eating area.
Exactly.
Where did you have your interaction with JT that night, sir?
Where the two ladies are standing at the cocktail table on the right.
You find me approach her and you can witness a laser pointer.
Yes, you may.
If you, that button right there on the side, Mr. Weaver, if you need to point out some areas for the members of the jury, you can use that.
Right here.
And JT happens not to be in this picture that I chose, but is that where you had the interaction with him?
Yes, sir.
Throughout the night, you've got the ceremonies. Basically, it looks like you're in the backyard from 8:30 until 10:30 or when the event ended. Throughout that night, where did you notice those teenagers, if you did at all?
I remember they were going in and out of the basements. I remember when the young ladies fell down in the kitchen because she was so intoxicated she couldn't walk. One of my staff members actually made a comment about that. And that's the only other time I remember seeing them.
When she fell down in the kitchen, where did she go after that?
She was heading downstairs.
And when you say that's when they were going in and out of the basement, that's
Yes, sir.
what you were referring to. Do you remember which of the young ladies it was that fell down?
I don't. I just remember she had a blue dress and blonde hair, but it's my understanding that both ladies had a blue dress and blonde hair.
So you didn't get her name or which one it was?
No, sir.
So that's when you saw them going into the basement?
Yes, sir.
Right. Other than that incident, do you recall seeing them there at that table for part of the night or most of the night or any portion of the night?
No, sir.
And were you, other than the interaction you had with JT, were you paying them, were you dealing with them on a regular basis?
No, sir. My job as the catering director is walking around constantly making sure that everyone is taken care of. My staff's okay, clients are okay.
The alcohol that was served there that night, Mr. Weaver, can you kind of describe for us how it was served in the front yard and in the backyard, or was that someone else's responsibility?
I assigned that task to my bartenders. I just remember them having a 6-foot table at the front as their bar. I don't really remember how they served it. I remember it was really crowded up at the front of the bar, and I had to walk through her landscaping to check on my bartenders to make sure they were okay. But that's it.
What was in the back?
The back, I remember it being the L shape. And when I walked up to them, I felt like it was a lot calmer once it moved to that area.
Do you recall, sir, how the bartenders were actually serving the alcohol in terms of were they handing glasses to individuals, or was it out there kind of in front of them on one of these tables?
I remember them handing glasses to guests.
At any point, did you see glasses out when it was busy, glasses out on the table?
I didn't, no.
Mr. Weaver, the champagne, you mentioned champagne was going to be served. How was that served?
Initially, it was supposed to be passed around, but when the guests congregated in the dining room, it was too full, and my staff tried to pass it, but we couldn't. It was just too crowded. So it was laid on the kitchen buffet.
And was that when you say that the champagne was just laid on the kitchen buffet? Was there a bartender watching over that champagne?
No, sir.
So people could just walk by and pick that champagne?
Correct. Yes.
And where exactly was that located, Mr. Weaver?
That was located about, I want to say 5 or 6 feet away from the dining room table.
In relation to this photograph where the teenagers were standing, how would they have gotten to that buffet where the champagne was?
They would have to walk probably about 20 feet or so inside the home.
Their table there where they're kind of posted up, their table for the night, was it the closest table to those champagne glasses?
No.
Where were the other tables?
There was another cocktail table exactly on the opposite side of where those kids are.
Beside the bar as well?
Yes.
When was the champagne put out, Mr. Weaver, if you recall?
It was towards the end of the evening. It was right around the cake cutting time. And I have that on my timeline as 9:15, but I don't know if it was exactly at 9:15 when that happened.
So the champagne would have been placed out before that event, though?
Probably like 5 minutes before. Is typically when we tried to pass it, but like I said, everyone was so crowded in there, and they were already starting to cut the cake that it was hard to do it.
Mr. Weaver, you mentioned seeing one of the females in the kitchen headed down towards the basement. She fell. Tell us a little bit more about that, what you recall.
I just remember her opening the door and her falling down on the ground.
At any point, did anyone assist her to get...
Well, me and my staff member, we went in to help her, but she had recovered herself and stood up and walked downstairs.
And again, you recall approximately what time that was, Mr. Weaver, using your timeline?
I can't tell you.
Before or after the cake cutting?
It'd have to be before the cake cutting.
Any other interaction that you had with any of the teenagers the rest of the night, sir?
The only thing I remember is Thomas came up to me at some point during the night and complained about woman troubles.
Would you recall when that was?
I think around the same time that lady had fell.
When you saw JT and his friends at that table with the glasses in front of them, and you formed the opinion that they were impaired, was anyone stopping them? Was Matthews stopping them from drinking at that point?
I have no idea. I never even saw the kids with a glass.
When you saw that, did you notify the Matthews and say, hey, this is going on, or anything like that?
No, sir.
At any point during the night, did you see anyone stop them from having wine glasses?
Well, I never saw them with wine glasses, but I never saw anyone bring attention to the kids directly that they were intoxicated.
I may have just a moment, Sharon. Who told you to put the wine glasses out on the open table, the champagne glasses out on the open table?
I believe it was Miss Matthews.
Ms. Foster used the term open bar yesterday in terms of describing what was the type of bar it was. What's the term open bar mean?
It means that the guests do not have to pay for their beverages.
What time did you said 10:30 was the proposed end time? Do you recall exactly what time this event did in fact end?
I don't remember the exact time. What I do remember is the DJ closing down, and I said something to him about closing down because it's our policy that we don't close down until my client says so.
Do you recall when Dr. Matthews or Mrs. Matthews said it was time to close it down?
I don't remember the exact time.
Was it after 10:30?
I would imagine so, because I felt like that's when the DJ, his contract ended, and that's the reason he was closing down.
At any point during that night, Mr. Weaver, did you become aware or did you notice that the teenagers had left?
No, the only time I was made aware that one of them had left was Kim approached me asking where JT was. And when she was asking me that, I thought she was referencing a small boy that I'd seen around. So I told her I thought I saw him go down towards the basement because I know he was trying to hang around with the bigger kids.
But that was not, in fact, JT. That was someone that was much
Correct.
younger.
Correct, yes.
Much younger. Did she clarify that with you in any way?
No.
And what time did she come to you approximately and say she was looking for JT?
I remember it was after the toast because we were cleaning up her kitchen area.
So that would have been sometime after 9:15?
That's correct, yes.
under the contract that you have there in front of you, just to be clear, Mr. Weaver, it says beverages, that under that box there, it has client to provide all beverages.
That's correct, yes.
Other than the beverages listed under your catering checklist, the wine, beer, bottled water, and champagne, no other beverages were provided in terms of soda or anything like that, is that right?
Not that I remember, but it's not unusual for a client to come up to me last minute and say, hey, we have some sodas in here we want you to include, or beers in here last minute. But from this event, I don't remember anything else being offered.
And you don't remember Dr. Matthews or Mrs. Matthews coming up and saying, hey, serve Coke as well, or anything like that?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. I don't have any further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Weaver.
Good morning.
If we could, Your Honor, have the exhibit taken now. Thank you. You indicated that you'd been at Pearside for about 4 years. Is that
That's
right?
correct, yes.
And you mentioned on direct also that you were paying special attention to this particular client because Ms. Matthews was friends with the owner of your restaurant.
That's correct, yes.
And of course, paying attention to every detail entails communicating with your employees, correct?
Yes.
And how many employees did you have working that particular event?
I had 2 bartenders, 2 wait staff, and I believe 3 kitchen staff.
And the bartenders were Casey Miller and Lucia Foster, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And had your bartenders been trained in how to bartend?
I'm assuming so. It's not my responsibility to train them. That's my general manager's and our bar manager's position. So when they send me an employee or a staff member, I assume that they've been trained.
And had you worked with Casey and Lucia before?
Yeah, Casey's actually done many off-site events with me, and Lucia, I believe this was her 2nd event that she had done with me.
And those off-site events, they include private homes, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've done that before.
Yes, sir.
Do you, as the manager of your bartenders, do you have any conversation with them about underage drinking? Did you on this occasion?
No, sir.
Did at any point Kim Matthews tell you that it was okay for the bartenders to serve underage guests at the wedding or reception?
Oh, no, sir.
You indicated that you noticed that JT was intoxicated, and I believe you mentioned on direct that you did not alert Chip or Kim as to his condition.
No,
Is that
sir.
correct? Was there a particular reason for that, or?
No, sir.
And with regards to the champagne that was served, how were the guests invited in for the cake cutting? Did you do that, or did someone else do that?
To be honest with you, I don't remember how it was done. It could have been done by the DJ. That's not uncommon either on wedding receptions.
So were you in close proximity to the cake being cut when that
Yes.
happened?
Yes.
Because that was right next to the kitchen, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And the group had surrounded the table where the cake was.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you had all your kitchen workers there. Were your bartenders still at the bar?
Yeah, my bartenders were still at the bar.
Okay.
And I remember it's me and 2 of my wait staff that were there, and then the owner as well.
So who poured the champagne?
To be honest with you, sir, I don't know who specifically poured the champagne. I would imagine that all of us probably were pouring it to make sure it was poured quickly so that we could get it out to the guest.
Well, wouldn't that typically be the responsibility of the bartenders?
Typically, but I needed them to stay at the bar.
So you were accepting responsibility for getting that champagne put out, is that
For
right?
helping, yes. Yes, sir.
And during the course of the time of putting the champagne out, How many glasses do you think you poured?
I'd say probably about 40.
And were you in close proximity to that table during the cake cutting?
Yes, sir.
And did you observe the guests come and pick up glasses of champagne?
Yes, sir.
Did you observe any of the group of young people, JT, Thomas, either of the girls, Natalie or Anna, take champagne?
No, sir.
Do you recall whether all the glasses of champagne were taken off the table?
They weren't, no. There was actually a lot left over.
Okay. So, and that happened, was the cake being cut simultaneously with the champagne being picked up, or was there more of a process to it? Did everybody get the champagne first so they could toast?
That was the plan. However, it didn't work out that way. People were surrounding the cake table, the cake cutting was happening, and they were trying to give a toast, but only 10 people might have had champagne in their hand.
And you said your estimate at how many glasses of champagne were taken was maybe about half. Is that correct? Or
Yes.
so about 20 glasses.
Yes.
Do you recall whether you saw Chip or Kim Matthews drink champagne?
I don't remember seeing them drink anything.
And as far as the bar in the front during the cocktail hour, how many times did you go check on your bartenders back there?
I want to say twice.
And is it your testimony that you did not see JT, Anna, Natalie, Thomas, any of the young people drinking while at either of those two occasions?
No, sir. Like I said before, I had to actually walk through their landscaping because it was so crowded in front of the bar. And I had a very quick interaction with my bartenders of just saying, hey, are you okay? Do you guys need anything? No, we're fine. Good. And I went to the other areas.
When your employees got to the residence, was the alcohol all in one place, and did your workers take it to the front bar, or how did that work?
I believe that's how it happened. I know Kim was helping direct my staff, the bartenders, on where the alcohol was being stored and when they could take it out. Since that's my bartender's responsibility, I don't really have a hand in that.
With regards to the reception that happened on the back patio, did you have any observations about how much alcohol was being consumed by the guests, sort of in general? Was a lot of alcohol being consumed? Not so much? Medium amount?
To be honest with you, sir, I have no idea.
Did you observe, other than JT and the young woman, any adults having intoxication issues?
No, sir.
Did you observe guests drinking water?
The only one that pops out of my head is JT. That's it.
With regards to your off-site events, is it unusual to have an open bar where the guests don't have to pay for?
No, it's not unusual.
And do you have to get any permits in order to do off-site catering that involves alcohol?
Yes, sir.
And did you have your current permits at the time you did this event?
As far as I'm aware of, yes, sir.
And with regard to the timeline, you had a set schedule, but is it likely that y'all are a little bit behind on the schedule given that you had to say something to the DJ?
It's very likely, yes.
And again, when you talked about the girl falling down, that was right beside the kitchen where the entrance to the basement.
That's correct, yes.
And that happened very quickly. You saw her go down, and you and your worker went and helped her, and she...
Well, we went to go to help her, and she had already recovered herself and stood up and started walking down the stairs.
You recall that she had blonde hair and
a blue dress.
So the names of the workers that were there, Casey Miller was a bartender, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Lucia Foster was a bartender, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Michelle Rochick?
It's Michelle.
Michelle, okay. What did that person do?
He's my head wait staff. So he is kind of my assistant manager. If I can't be there, then he's there.
Algie Walker was there?
Yes, he's a server.
Randy Towns, was that a worker?
He was one of the chefs.
And was your owner there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did your own, and George Bakashaw, is that how you pronounce it?
I believe so, yes.
Did
I
he
can
give
never
you
say
any
his name.
directions during the course of the event?
He does, yes. He has a very peculiar way about how he wants things set up. So even if I come in and set up and I think it's appropriate, because he's been in the industry 3 times as long as I have, longer, he'll come in and share his expertise on how we should do things.
Did you interact with Kim and Chip Matthews very much during the course of the evening?
I remember checking in with Kim maybe 1 or 2 times, just making sure that she was okay, she didn't need anything.
Did you have any observations of what they were doing during the course of the reception? Did you have a feel for where they were at any time?
No, not at all.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Redirect.
Mr. Weaver, kind of follow up with that. Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews, they were out at the reception, correct?
Yes, yes,
But they were out and about during the night.
yes, yes.
They went to another room while this
No.
reception was about. Did you know how the teenagers were at the time you interacted with them?
I didn't know how old they were, but they appeared to be very young.
Younger than the other guests.
Yes.
And you may have said this on direct, and I apologize if I'm asking you again. Your interaction with JT, just in terms of time frame, do you recall if it was before the cake cutting?
It was before the cake cutting, yes.
And so he was already impaired at that point.
Yes, sir.
And your timeline has the cake cutting, I believe, at 9:30.
9:15.
Did Thomas elaborate on, you said he said something to you about having girl troubles. Did he elaborate on that?
No, it was just off the cuff comment.
When you saw JT and the other female impaired, kind of what did you think about that? I mean, you said you knew they were very young. What kind of was your thought process on these young folks are impaired?
Objection.
Wait just a minute. What was his thought process on what about their impairment?
On the young individuals being impaired.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Okay, it shocked me that they were drunk.
It shocked you that they were drunk.
Yes,
Why is that?
because they were underage kids.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Recross examination.
Yes, please. Mr. Weaver, your last statement was you were shocked. Your testimony is you didn't observe them drink any alcohol or get any alcohol from the bar at either location, correct?
That's correct.
So, were you concerned that your bartenders had served them alcohol?
No,
Why not?
because they're bartenders, they know the state law.
That's all the questions I had.
Redirect.
No, you're right. Thank you.
You may step down, sir. Please call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will call Ms. Sharon Biki to the stand.
And if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Beinecke, good morning.
Good morning.
And I've sometimes called you Miss Beinecke, and I heard someone else say Beinecke, so which is it?
Beinecke.
Beinecke, okay, I apologize. Miss Beinecke, will you please state your name for the record?
Sharon Beinecke.
Okay, will you spell your last name for us, please?
Beineke.
And Miss Beinecke, how are you currently employed?
Well, I've just retired from Ravenscroft.
How long have you been retired?
Since sort of the end of school, I finished the yearbook and I've cleaned out my room and my office, and technically my contract ends August 31st.
So when the school year ended, this 2015 class was your last class?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. And if I may approach the witness stand, Your Honor, just to get some papers off.
You may.
Thank you. Ms. Beinecke, what did you teach there at Ravenscroft prior to your retirement?
Honors English 2 and Senior Shakespeare.
So Honors English 2, what age group or?
Sophomores.
Sophomores. And then senior, what was the second one?
English 4 Shakespeare.
So that's for seniors.
Yes.
Who, we've heard the names J.T. Taylor, Thomas Matthews, Josh McCoy, Anna Ergish, and Natalie Freeman. Do you know those individuals?
I taught J.T., Thomas, and Anna.
J.T., Thomas, and Anna, so never Josh.
Right, that's correct.
What classes did you teach J.T. and Anna and Thomas?
In the Senior Shakespeare, but they were not in the same class together. They were in different classes.
Thomas, when you taught him, how old was he, ma'am? Do you recall?
I don't know.
Was it 18 or 19?
It would be, since they're seniors, probably 17 or 18. I didn't know birth dates.
Less than 21 years of age.
Yes, sir.
How was your relationship with each one of those students, Mrs. Beinecke?
They were interesting students. My class is rather hands-on, so the interaction would have been not only reading but performing and so forth. So I'd like to think it was good.
Good kids, not
Yes.
troublemakers in
Yes.
the class.
Yes.
Mrs. Beinecke, were you invited to the Matthews to the wedding at the Matthews house back on June 28th, 2014?
Yes, sir.
How did you know the Matthews or the individuals involved in the wedding?
My daughter and Nicole have been friends for a long time at Ravenscroft. They were both lifers for the class of 2005. And I had actually taught Nicole sophomore English. And Nicole and Megan had been in the band together for, I think, from like 7th grade to 10th grade. And basketball from 7th to 10th, and then in the band together from 4th through 12th.
Mrs. Beinecke, how did you know Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews, if you did?
Through our being together at games, and parents sit together and watch their girls and so forth play. So mostly in that, and then as parents of my daughter's friend.
And would you consider yourself acquaintances with the Matthews or friends? And what I mean by friends is that you did something with them on a regular basis, or was it primarily in connection with
Acquaintances.
Acquaintances. Okay. Had you been over to their house at all?
Just to drop off my daughter or to pick her up from sleepovers and things like that.
And I know this is maybe a tough distinction, but would you have considered yourself a guest of Nicole at the party or of the Matthews?
That's rather hard to distinguish. I would think Nicole's.
That was your connection.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beinecke. About what time did you recall arriving at the wedding there?
I think it was about 6:45 or 7, because yes, I think about 6:45 to 7.
And when you got there, Ms. Beinecke, kind of what happened there when you first arrived?
I let my daughter know I was here so she could come help me with the gifts that were in the car so that we could take them in. And then just kind of waiting for things to settle in, find a seat in the back where I could see, and be ready for the reception. Excuse me, the wedding.
Anything of note or unusual happened during the actual ceremony itself?
No.
And I've mentioned to you the teenagers involved here that we talked about. When was your first interaction with them, Ms. Beinecke?
JT saw me in the back where the chairs were set up for the wedding, and called my name and came over and gave me a hug.
And was this prior to the actual ceremony?
Yes, sir.
Anything unusual about how JT was acting at that time?
No, he just seemed to be his regular jocular self.
There's been some testimony about him drinking at some point. At that point during the night, did you notice any odor of alcohol, or if he was impaired in any way?
At that time?
Yes, ma'am.
The hug? No, sir, I didn't. But I'm 4'11", and he was over 6, I think. So we just had that kind of a adult student hug.
Yes, ma'am. So that was prior to the ceremony. After the ceremony, did you have any interaction with the teenagers?
After the ceremony?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Out on the front porch. I guess they're calling it the cocktail hour or whatever.
Sure. Describe for us what kind of your interaction with the teenagers there, ma'am.
As everyone has said, the porch was rather full, so there was a long line of people waiting to get a beverage. And as the line moved, I passed by, actually the line stopped, right where the kids were at a high top.
Yeah. What did you see there? What was your interaction with them there?
I saw wine glasses on the table, and I spoke to them and I said, well, this is awkward, and nothing was really said at that moment, and I said, don't you think this is awkward? And I don't remember who said. I heard one yes, and I heard one no. And then, and again, I don't remember which boy said what, but one said, you can't do anything, Mrs. Beinecke, we've graduated. And another said, and we're not your kids. And at that moment, the line moved forward, and I was able to move past them.
You said there were wine glasses on the table in front of them.
Yes, sir.
Right. Do you recall if those wine glasses had wine in them?
I did see some wine in the glasses. I can't tell you how many were empty or full or to what degree.
Other than the wine glasses, did you see soda cans or beer cans or water bottles or anything?
Not that I remember.
What you saw on the table was wine glasses. You said that the individuals were at the table. Do you remember which students were there at that table?
I believe they all were. I knew that I did not recognize one girl, who is Natalie. I had never seen her before.
Didn't know her, but recognized Josh.
Yes, yes, sir.
And Thomas and Ann. Let's talk about that conversation that you had with them. You said you began with saying this is awkward. Why did you find it awkward, Ms. Beinecke?
Because they were underage and there were wine glasses present on the table.
And when you saw that, how did that make you feel?
The word awkward really described it. Uncomfortable. I didn't know what else to say.
Were you aware if Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews were there in attendance at their daughter's wedding?
They were at the wedding and at that point involved in the photo session, I understand.
You said that the teenagers kind of made a comment to you. Go through that again for us, and if you recall who said what.
I don't remember which, but one boy said, you can't do anything, Mrs. Beinecke, we've graduated. And that would have been, Josh did not say anything, so I don't know which boy said which, and then another one, and we're not your kids.
And so it was either Thomas.
It was either Thomas or JT.
or JT.
Yep. Yes, sir.
And this conversation that you were having with them, were they joking with you, or were they being mean to you? What was the
Oh, no, very respectful and kind of joking.
At any point, did any of the teenagers there at the table say, hey, we'll put it away, or we'll stop?
No, sir.
After that interaction, excuse me, strike that. While they were there at the table and the wine glasses were in front of them, at that point, could you tell if they were impaired in any way?
No, sir.
Smell anything?
No, sir.
Was anyone there in the line with you as you passed by the table?
Yes, the ring and box were behind me.
Your Honor, if I may publish State's Exhibit number 18.
You may.
Ms. Beinecke states that exhibit number 18 is being published at that point. What do you see there, ma'am?
I see JT and Josh and Anna and Thomas, and I think that's Natalie at that high top on the front porch.
And the testimony that you just gave, is that where your interaction with the teenagers happened?
Yes, sir.
Right there at that table.
Yes, sir.
In the background of that photograph, what is that area back there? It's almost where the cursor is. Is that where the bar was?
Yes, sir.
How were drinks being served there at the bar, Mrs. Beinecke, if you recall?
At that point, there was a large table where all the glasses were being placed. And then there was a table behind where glasses were taken from, and I guess the wine was back there somewhere. And the only thing that I saw was that the glasses were poured and placed on the long table for people to select from at that point.
So that was early on, and I believe you testified earlier that the line was fairly long at that point.
I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, the line for the bar was pretty long.
Yes, yes.
So when you say poured in place, the glasses were out for people just to walk up and take.
Yes.
And do you recall how did you get a wine glass that night?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall how you got your wine?
I picked it up from the table.
And at that point, Mrs. Beinecke, it was apparent to you that the teenagers had already had wine glasses.
They were on the table, sir.
Do you know, Mrs. Beinecke, if during the course of the night, either there at the front bar, or we'll talk about the back area in a while, but do you recall if that was the practice throughout the night of wine glasses being placed on the table in front of the bartenders?
As far as I saw, that's correct.
Any other interaction with the teenagers there in the front yard or the front patio?
No, sir.
And we've heard testimony that at some point the wedding or the reception moved to the back area.
Yes, sir.
Were you part of that?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you did back there, ma'am.
I found a table in the back corner, or well, not in the back corner, but over right off the patio near the what then later became the dance floor and so forth, but I was over in the back. I didn't go to the back of the yard. It was, I guess, off to the side near where the meal would have been set up, the buffet.
Who'd you sit with back there, Ms. Brown?
Jane Steelman and several other people. I don't really remember who else sat with us, but one of the other friends' moms, and we were catching up.
In the backyard, did you notice the teenagers back there?
No, sir. I did not. At that point, most of my daughter's friends, Nicole's friends, and everything were back there at that point in time.
While you were there for the entirety of the reception in the backyard, did you ever have any interaction with the kids, or
No, sir.
did you notice them throughout the reception in the backyard? And when I say notice, saw where they were.
I didn't see if they sat back at another table or where they went, but at one point they were at another high top.
And what did you see, if anything, there while they were at the high top in the back?
Not much, because for the most part there was like shrubbery or something, and so we were kind of in the back and or off to the side, I guess I should say. So I really didn't get out. I didn't dance, except maybe with the girls in the side. I did not get out. I just really didn't move much.
At that high top table, did you see any glasses or the teenagers drinking at that time?
I didn't really take special notice of that, so I really can't remember. I'm sorry.
Mr. Weaver just described the cake cutting ceremony.
Yes, sir.
Were you present for that, Ms. Spiney?
Yes.
Kind of what do you remember about the cake cutting?
It was fun. There were a lot of people in there, and I was just kind of enjoying seeing this new part of Nicole's life take form.
Did you take note of the teenagers doing the cake cutting?
I did not. I was really up and close, and so that I could see, and I took a picture of the cake cutting with my phone.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yes, sir.
The champagne that Mr. Weaver described during the cake cutting, do you recall that?
I recall that there was champagne there.
How did you have a glass of the champagne?
No.
Do you recall if someone wanted a glass of champagne, how you could have gotten it there at the cake cutting?
No, sir.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
You may.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Ms. Beinecke, I'm going to hand you three photographs that have been labeled for identification purposes: States Exhibit 34, 35, and 36. Excuse me. We'll start with 34, and do you recognize who's depicted there in that picture?
Yes, I'm with Nicole, and Jane Steelman is seated right here.
And that's a picture of you and Nicole at
Yes,
the
sir.
wedding. States Exhibit number 35, if you can kind of describe what you see there in that photograph.
It's, I think, Nicole's first dance, and I see the kids at the high top up there, and I'm right here.
And States Exhibit number 36, if you can identify what you see there. Ma'am.
Yes. I'm taking a picture of the cake cutting. I think that's my daughter behind. I see Chip and JT.
And these fairly inaccurately represent the events that you've described there that night.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce States Exhibit 34, 35, and 36 into evidence.
States Exhibits 34, 35, and 36 are admitted into evidence.
And if I may publish those
Yes, you may.
items as well. Ms. Culper, the first one we'll do is 3N2 3733. This is States Exhibit number 34, Ms. Beinecke, excuse me. That's the photograph you identified as yourself and Miss and Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
States Exhibit number 35, which is our 2N37140. Mrs. Beinecke, what do you see there
Yes, sir.
on the screen?
Nicole with the dance, the photographer, and the kids at the high top at the back.
And there's a laser pointer right.
And me.
There's a laser pointer right in front of you. Can you show the members of the jury where you are in this photograph?
Right there.
That's you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you said, and you testified earlier that you didn't have a lot of interaction with the kids.
That is correct.
But you did see them there at that table.
Yes.
And using the laser pointer, can you kind of point out for us where you saw them?
Excuse me, right there.
The bar area, where was the bar there that night?
Back there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
You, in this photograph, you appeared to be looking in that direction, Miss Beinecke. Were you noticing the kids at that point? And you can take that.
Well, I know. I'm guessing yes. I don't know what I was, checking for or what drew my attention.
But you're looking their direction.
Yes, sir.
And you said you noticed them there that night back there.
Yes, sir.
All right, State's Exhibit 36, which is our 3N23777. What do you see there, Mrs. Beinecke?
I'm taking a photo of the cake cutting. My daughter is right behind me. I see Chip and I see JT.
And again, using the laser pointer.
Yes, sir.
That's fine. Your daughter, is she taking?
Right there. Mm-hmm.
She's taking a photo as well.
Mm-hmm.
You said Chip. Is that Dr. Matthews?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
That's fine. And then where is JT?
JT is right there.
And how do you recognize that that's JT?
Well, I've taught him and he has on his signature bow tie.
Did he wear a blue bow tie like that quite frequently?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Beinecke.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Beinecke, thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Beinecke.
Good morning.
With regards to your initial observations of the group of former students,
Yes.
even though it was awkward, you didn't feel compelled to say anything to Kim or Chip about what you'd seen, right?
That is correct.
And if we could have State's Exhibit 35 back, please. And if I could, y'all have the actual pictures themselves, or are they up there? 30, I'd like 35 and 36, please.
Yes, sir.
Even though in State's Exhibit 35, you're looking towards the back, you don't recall making any specific observations about the young people at that point.
That's correct.
And of course, that's the first dance between Jason and Nicole.
Yes.
So is it fair to say that your attention probably was focused on them, and that was just happened to be a shot when you weren't looking at them?
Yes, sir, that's fair to say.
Okay. And of course, as you look at that photograph, State's Exhibit 35, the attention of the other party or wedding guest appears to be on Nicole and Jason,
Yes.
correct? And that was a big event in the first dance is a big event during
Yes,
the
it is, sir.
And you indicated if we could have State's Exhibit 36, please. You indicated that the cutting of the cake was fun,
Yes.
right? And there were your daughter and you were celebrating the moment and memorializing it by taking your own pictures, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall where Kim was during that period of time?
No, sir.
And were you aware of JT behind you at any point during that time?
No, sir, I was not.
And if I could approach, Your Honor.
You may.
When looking at Dr. Matthews right there, Ms. Beinecke,
Mm-hmm.
take a look at that glass that he has in his hand and take a look at it closely. Does that appear to be water, or does that appear to be an alcoholic beverage? Or can you tell?
I cannot tell.
Does it have ice in
The
it?
lighting is, the lighting is poor with this, so I cannot tell.
Can you tell if there's ice in the glass?
No, sir, I can't.
With regards to the cake cutting as well, in this particular picture, do you see anybody else with champagne, or does it appear to be other types of drinks?
They seem to be other types of drinks. I don't see a flute.
And with regards to the alcohol consumption in general, was it your perception that there was a lot of alcohol being consumed on the back patio?
Not that I noticed.
Did you have any occasion to think that Chip or Kim were impaired or intoxicated at any time?
Absolutely not.
And Nicole and Jason weren't drinking too much, were they?
Absolutely not.
And of course, Jason had his two sons there, right? Do you recall that?
Excuse me?
Jason,
Oh.
or the groom, he had two sons there, correct?
Yes.
And they were young. Did they look to be between 10 and 12 years old?
That would be a good guesstimate.
Okay. How many glasses of wine do you recall having?
2.
And was that one early and then one on the back patio?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any other conversations with any of your former students or any of the other young people after the cake cutting?
Not with the 5 young people that we're talking about. No, I did not. But with my daughter and some of the other friends that were there, yes. That was after that.
Do you recall what time the cake cutting was?
No, I mean, I've heard it was supposed to take place at 9:15, so I assume
Well, you don't have any specific recollection of what?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
And do you recall what time you left?
After the music, after the DJ closed and said this was the last song. Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Ms. Bonneke, Mr. Miles asked you about that you didn't tell Dr. Matthews and Kim Matthews about the underage drinking that you saw. Why didn't you tell them?
I was uncertain as to what social or legal protocol would be appropriate. And other than that, I have no answer.
Thank you, Ms. Bonneke. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Recross.
No, thank you.
You may step down. Please call your next witness.
Well, at this time, the state will call Mr. Thad Lawrence to the stand.
Sir, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lawrence, good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Excuse me, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Lawrence, will you please state your name for the record?
William Thaddeus Lawrence.
And Mr. Lawrence, how are you employed, sir?
I was hired by Nicole and Jason to be their wedding photographer.
And are you still a wedding photographer?
Yes, sir.
You're still a wedding photographer today.
Yes, sir.
What type of photography do you do?
Weddings is the most of what we do. We do lots of families and other stuff as well, but yeah, weddings is our main business.
And you said we do this business. Do you work with anybody?
My wife.
Who's your wife?
Sarah Lawrence,
How long have you and Sarah been doing wedding photography?
since 2007.
And prior to that, any type of other employment?
We worked in the school system. I worked in the school system until 2010, and my wife till 2011.
Mr. Lawrence, you mentioned that you were hired to be the photographer in this case for for Dr. Matthews and Kim Matthews' daughter, Nicole. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
How did you go about? How did they contact you? How did you make that arrangement?
They found us through another photographer who wasn't available, and they referred us to them.
Did you meet with the Matthews beforehand, set up an agreement to be their photographer?
I never met with the Matthews prior to the wedding, the rehearsal night.
How about, who did you meet with?
Nicole and Jason.
Going to June 28th of 2014, what time did you arrive there at the wedding site?
I don't remember exactly, but it would have been earlier in the day, maybe around lunchtime.
And did you immediately begin taking pictures?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Lawrence, approximately how many pictures did you take for this wedding?
Gosh, I can't say specifically this wedding, but usually we take around 4,000 to 5,000.
And is that between you and your
Correct.
wife?
Yes.
How long did you stay at the wedding there that night?
We were there till the end of the night, till most of the guests had parted their ways. We usually stay till everybody's out of the way and gone. We don't want to miss. We're there all day and all night, so we usually stay till the end of everything is completed.
Mr. Lawrence, can you tell us a little bit about when the first interaction you had with the 5 teenagers involved in this case began?
Yes. The first time I noticed them was after the ceremony during the cocktail hour. I went around front of the house and noticed them. They were laughing and giggling and having a good time. So obviously I love getting that, capturing that. So I walked over and started taking some pictures of them while they were joking, and took them a minute to notice me, and then once they noticed me, they laughed and said hello, and then I kind of went on about the evening.
When you took, and we've seen that photograph, and I believe it was just on the board,
Mhm.
photograph of the young people out front. That's your photograph.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, what did you notice there when you took that photograph?
They were very happy and exuberant and enjoying themselves, having a good time. They were drinking. The drinks were on the table, and they were actively drinking.
Did you know how they were at that time?
I did not.
Did you know if they were over 21, under 21?
No, sir.
You said they were being happy or whatnot. At that point, sir, did you feel like they were impaired in any way?
Not specifically, no.
After noticing the teenagers there, sir, when was the next time you remember having an interaction with them?
Later in the evening, they were at the taller table there in the walkway. Of course, Sarah and I were all over the place, running around taking pictures, inside the house, outside, capturing as much as possible, and they kind of stopped me and started talking to me, and the 2 girls and the 2 guys that had been drinking were trying to say stuff to me, and a lot of it didn't make sense. They were telling me they were amazed at how many pictures we were taking and all this stuff, but most of what they said was not really understandable. The one taller young man that was there, who I've learned to be Josh McCoy, did give me kind of a nod and a look, like kind of apologizing for his friends. And then I kind of went on my way after that.
Josh McCoy, the one you said that kind of gave you the look, did he appear to be impaired?
No, not at all.
How about at the other 4? What was your opinion of their level of impairment?
They were very intoxicated.
And you mentioned seeing the wine glasses and the drinking down the front patio. How about when you saw them there in the back?
Yeah.
Again, wine glasses on the table.
Correct.
And how about, were they actually drinking from the wine glasses when you saw them, or having?
I don't know if they actually drank while I was talking to them at the moment, but I did observe them drinking at the table.
Anything else about that conversation that you remember, Mr. Lawrence? You said they were talking about how many pictures you were taking. Anything else that they said to you?
Like I said, I couldn't make out a lot of what they were trying to say. It was very jumbled conversation. So
Were they pretty open in the out in the open about their drinking and how they were acting?
yes, at that point it was very clear they were not concerned about their drinking. Yeah.
When did you next have, well, in terms of time, Mr. Lawrence, you said you were there all night. I guess we can kind of use the cake cutting as a reference. Do you recall if this interaction you had with the teenagers was before or after the cake cutting?
Before.
Before the cake cutting. So we've heard that the cake cutting happened around 9:15. Does that seem about the right
I
time?
think it was a little bit later than that, maybe 9:45.
But the teenagers were intoxicated at that point?
Yes.
Prior to the cake cutting?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, what do you recall, what interaction do you recall having next, sir?
The only other interaction with those four were I went upstairs to use the restroom, and on my way back down, there's a landing in their stairwell about midway up the stairs, and Thomas Matthews and another one of the girls were making out in the corner of the landing, and he just turned to me as I was coming down and just was like, "Please don't tell anybody," and I just kind of, I have no reason to say anything and just kept on my way. But that was the only other interaction I had.
Do you recall which of the girls it was that you saw him with?
I feel like she was in a blue dress. Other than that, I don't know which one.
All right. About what time was it that you saw that, Mr. Lawrence?
Honestly, I don't remember exactly when that was.
Was that pre or post cake cutting?
It was probably before cake cutting.
And was that the last time you saw any of the teenagers that night?
No, I don't believe that was the last moment I saw them specifically, but they were at the table for a while that evening, so I may have seen them, later on as well, but not specifically.
That was the last interaction.
Right.
That you had with,
Correct.
Mr. Lawrence, how long would you say the teenagers were there at that table throughout the night?
They were there for the majority of the evening, from the start of the reception till about the cake cutting.
And at some point, did you notice that the teenagers weren't there at that table anymore?
Yeah, after the cake cutting, I didn't see any of the teenagers anymore.
Did you see where they went?
I did not.
Did you ever go down into the basement area for any reason, Mr. Lawrence?
No, sir.
You testified that you took a lot of the pictures in this case, or took all the pictures in this case, I guess. And have you had an opportunity to look at them since the pictures were taken?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
If I may have just a moment before I do that, speed things up. Mr. Lawrence, I'm handing you a group of photographs that begins with State's Exhibit number 37 and it goes through State's Exhibit number 48. Stay here. Take a look at those photographs. Tell me if you recognize those photographs, and you can just kind of flip through them briefly and let me know when you've had a chance. You don't have to describe each one.
Yes, sir.
Those photographs you took there that night, Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, sir.
Any changes or alterations?
No, sir.
Your Honor, this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibits 37 through 48.
State's Exhibits 37 through 48 inclusive are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, this time I would ask to publish these photos to the members of the jury.
All right.
We'll start with State's Exhibit number 37, which is our 3N23716. Three N23716. Three 716. Thank you, ma'am. This tell me who you see here, Mr. Lawrence.
Dr. Matthews and his daughter?
And his daughter, what, do you recall what her name was?
I don't.
Okay. This photograph, I know it's kind of a zoomed in photograph of the two of them. Do you recall where this photograph was taken there?
Yes, it was taken right across from the table where the kids were at.
How far would you say this bench, or I guess it's a bench, was from where the kids were located?
Maybe 5 to 10 feet.
So it was taken right across from them.
Right.
And there were kids at the table when this photograph was taken?
I don't know specifically if that was the case or not.
But near that table?
Yes, they were near the table.
State's Exhibit number 38, which is our 3N23586. It's one above. 3586. Who do you see there, sir?
Thomas Matthews?
And I'm standing a little closer to you right now, so just make sure you keep your voice up for the folks back there. And there's a laser pointer there, Mr. Lawrence. You identified that as Thomas Matthews?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you can take a look at the actual photograph if you need, but at that point, what does Thomas Matthews appear to have in his hand?
Seems to have a glass of wine.
Do you recall seeing Mr. Matthews with that glass of wine or glasses of wine throughout the evening?
Yes, sir.
And at this point, where is Mr. Matthews located?
He's in the middle of the area where people were dancing and eating, right down from where the table was.
So not just at that table.
Correct.
State's Exhibit number 39, which is our 3N23725. Who do you see there, sir? And again, you can use that.
That's Thomas Matthews as well.
You described a girl with blonde hair in a blue dress. Do you recognize that individual in that picture?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Do you know if that was the same girl that you saw Thomas with upstairs?
They look the two girls over there look very similar. I can't say for sure, but it does look like her.
This girl with the blue dress, can you see what is in her hand as well?
Yeah, she's holding a wine glass as well.
And Mr. Lawrence, this photograph, can you tell where that photograph was taken?
Yes, this is very near the table that they were at for most of the night, right out in the back of the house.
Can you tell if it was actually at the table or away from the table, but in that vicinity?
Yeah, it was probably a few feet away from the table.
Thank you, sir. State's Exhibit number 40, which is 3N23829 for our purposes. Who do you see there, sir?
Nicole in the foreground and JT in the background, walking with a wine glass in his hand.
Okay, and using that laser pointer, can you point out for the members of the jury where JT was?
JT's right here.
Now, at that point, Mr. Lawrence, where is JT head? Well, what direction is JT headed?
Out into the courtyard area.
And again, what was happening there in the courtyard area?
Dancing and fellowship.
The lady in the teal dress, do you know who that was?
I believe she was the stepmother of Nicole.
Okay. These other, and maybe they're on the side, and I guess the khaki suit, can you tell me who that was? Or who
Yes,
that is? Right
there, that's Jason, the groom.
So this group that JT is walking towards appears to be family of the groom.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. State's Exhibit number 41, 2N36480. And I believe the next group's just going to kind of be photos of the house itself. Can you turn that over for me, Mr. Lawrence? 6480, 2N3. What do we have there?
That's a picture at the front of the Matthews home.
And was that prior to the wedding actually beginning?
Yes, sir.
If you can, using that, kind of using the laser pointer, just show the members of the jury kind of where the different things were happening there in the front patio.
During the cocktail hour?
Yeah, yes, sir.
My interaction was right over here with the kids. There was a little table right here in the corner by the door. And there were tables set up all around the front out there where people could congregate. And but that's where my interaction was to the left of the front door.
And how about where was the bar?
I honestly don't remember.
State's Exhibit number 42, which is our 2N36477. What do you see there, sir?
This is the backyard.
And this is prior to the reception as well.
Correct.
All right, and can you show us where the table where you saw the teenagers would be, and using that photograph?
Right. The table was right about here.
Okay, and the photograph where you saw Dr. Matthews and his daughter, where was that bench?
They were sitting on the bench right over here.
State's Exhibit 43, which is our 2N36521. What do you see there, Mr. Lawrence?
This is standing at the house looking out into the courtyard area.
Is that where the ceremony would have taken place, and then where was the dance floor and eating area later on?
Right. So the ceremony took place, under the archway here, and then the dancing and everything else took place outside there.
State's Exhibit number 44, which is our 2N36984. What do you see there?
The same area, and this is the table that the kids were at for most of the evening.
State's Exhibit number 45, which is our 6986.
A shot from the opposite side, again in the courtyard looking back at the house.
State's Exhibit number 46, which is our 2N36988.
And this is where the food was served, on the left-hand side over here. And then the courtyard here, and that's where the main walkway is.
Is this the only area, Mr. Lawrence, where food was being served that night, to your knowledge?
Yes, the entrees and all that stuff, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the main walkway. That main walkway, what do you mean by that?
It's where most the guests would enter that area, would go from the front of the house. They go straight through the front of the house from where they park their car to get to the wedding and reception.
Someone need to use the restroom or go in for the cake cutting, is that the walkway they would have used?
Most likely, yes.
State's Exhibit 47, 2N3 7416. I'm sorry. Why do you see that?
This is during the reception. People just gathering and talking and having a good time.
And that's kind of during the reception itself, after everything had been moved to the back.
Correct.
And State's Exhibit number 48, 3N2 3543.
And these are the wine bottles that were sitting out on the table at the bar that was, I believe, on the back porch.
Can you describe for us, Mr. Lawrence, kind of how that bar was set up and how things were how glasses were being delivered, if you recall?
I don't remember specifically how the glasses were being delivered. I do remember seeing some of them sitting on the table. And I do remember seeing bartenders hand, people glasses. But the bar was set up, if you walk out of the door of the house to the backyard, it was on the left-hand side. If you're looking at the house, it would be on your right-hand side. And it was under the porch, very near where the two tables were, one of which the kids were at.
You mentioned that the bottles were set up in this manner. Were the bottles on? Can you describe kind of what the layout was on the bottles, and then where the glasses were being placed or served?
I don't remember specifically. This was before the wedding, I believe, and they had, set everything up to look nice. This was set up on the table they served from, I believe. Other than that, I really don't know.
That's fine, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you. You recall, Mr. Lawrence, in terms of JT and Thomas and the two girls, if you had to kind of rank in level of impairment, who was the most impaired, least impaired, do you recall?
I don't know. The one interaction I had with them where they all spoke to me, the four of them all spoke to me, but the girls talked a little bit more. They all seemed pretty equal in terms of their intoxication.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions at this time.
Rather start a recess before cross-examination?
I would prefer recess, Your Honor.
All right. We'll take a recess for 15 minutes. I'll stretch it beyond that a little bit, make it 11:25. Remember and follow my instructions. Jurors are excused first. Everyone else remain in place. Return at 11:25.